Hi, folks. Welcome to our new time slot. Maybe you people who are still awake don't remember us, but we're very informal here. This is Revolting News, and I'm just finishing my late night snack. Actually, this is being taped while you're sleeping. I remember when the Fugs were playing on McDougal Street, and Lee Crabtree, our wonderful pianist, brought in a Chinese dinner and started eating it in the middle of the show while he was playing the piano. And Ed nearly had a fit, but I thought it was charming. So I want to keep that old tradition. You know, we're very informal here. So if I get up in the middle of the show, it's because I have a mild prostate problem, but I'll be right back. But anyway, as you will remember from last week, if there was a last week, we're doing a long march through the through my unpublished, what'd you say, unpublishable novel called The Fugs. It's about an imaginary 60s rock group in the East Village. And in our last, we were reading chapter 1, which took place in the Metro Cafe. I don't know, what did we call it here? In some cafe on Second Avenue near 10th Street, where the elite used to meet to to read poetry. And the non-elite, it was very non-elitist actually. And after this reading, they retreat now to, including the two main characters, Yuri Yankevitch, and Red Blaze, the two main characters. And they go around the corner of St. Mark's Place to a bar called the Yukon, and that's where we'll take up the story. The Yukon had been just a local bar called the Khmelnytsky Rest. For all of you non-historical people, Khmelnytsky was the Polish patriot who had, in addition to trying to free Poland, had slaughtered tens of thousands of Jews in the 18th century, but he's still a fave among some Poles. A bar called the Khmelnytsky Rest until the Poets and Beatniks, it had been just a local bar, until the Poets and Beatniks started dropping in. Then for a while it had two clienteles. Old, semi-drunk, retired laborers in the daytime who wore stained, double-breasted suits over their old cardigans, and in winter they wore immaculate black lambskin Cossack hats, which they kept in cellophane and mothballs throughout the dreaded, stinking East Side summer. Gradually, the Poles and Ukrainians left, not willing to mix with the, quote, hooligans and degenerates, as they called the new, young, careless crowd. The proprietor, a sharp ex-carpenter from Kiev and Avenue C, saw a good thing and started to remodel the place, brought in a jukebox, and moved the ethnic affairs up to the 3rd floor. This left the basement ballroom for the new hipster crowd, and crowd they did. When Yuri arrived that night with Hope, a small crowd was already drinking, mostly Canadian Ace beer from thick glass pitchers, and discussing the previous reading. I think maybe you gave him too many mantras for one evening, Ethan Gallo was saying to Mogul. Nonsense. Nonsense, Mogul spit out, coughing from his gauze. You can't have too many mantras. The monotony is part of the message. You have to empty your head to fill it. Alex Rayburn choked back a laugh and ordered a rum and Pepsi-Cola. Red Blaze stared morosely at his scotch and soda and looked up from time to time to see if any pussy was falling in. Yuri and Hope passed the mogul table, and Yuri, not wishing to appear to be sucking up to mogul, tried to catch his eye, say hello, and sit down at the next table. He failed to catch his eye, but he did manage to sit down at the next table. He and Hope ordered 2 glasses of beer. The jukebox struck up, "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and he and Hope got up sort of shyly and started to dance. There were only a few couples on the floor, and they both felt self-conscious. But after a few numbers, they really got into it. It was cathartic, the new music. The Stones came on. Together with all the other dancers, they grew wilder and wilder. They hadn't danced for years, and the sheer physical movement was exhilarating. After 3/4 of an hour of uninterrupted dancing, they were ready to sit down when the Beatles came on again. "I want to hold your foot," Yuri shouted. "I want to hold your foot." Exhausted, they sat down. Red Blaze came over to their table and sat down. Slowly and methodically ripping off the label of a bottle of Miller's he was drinking, Red belched softly, and looking Yuri straight in the eye, he said slowly, "Yuri, you hear this dipshit coming over the jukebox, this illiterate swaggle? I think we ought to form a rock group, a poets group." Yuri sweated and smiled. "I'll drink to that," he said, and he gently poured 1/5 of a glass of beer over Hope's head. "Yuri, you're drunk," he spluttered, punching him in the chest. "Not drunk," said Yuri. "Just happy." And now we're continuing chapter 2 of the Fugs, titled Calm Yourself Motherfucker, and this is part 2 of chapter 2. The group is now getting together to rehearse, the new group. They met at Red Blaze's well-known bookstore, the Pieces of Mind, located in the white-tiled premises of an abandoned kosher butcher shop, deep in the lowest east side between Avenue E and Avenue F, on fabled St. Mark's Place. The store hadn't been rented for years, and although fairly clean, still had the butcher shop appurtenances hanging, literally, about. The large plate glass front window still had 7 meat hooks in it, appended from a thick varnished oak bar that ran about 8 feet across it. Red had hung 2 genuine rubber chickens from the hooks, plus some books and a small toy frog. And it also emblazoned in blue and yellow poster paint in large mock Gothic script the legend, "The Pieces of Mind Bookstore," and a sweeping crescent across the dirty outside face of the window. Local vandals were forever amending it with black spray can to read, "The Pieces of Ass Bookstore." Red kept erasing the correction for a while. Kept erasing the, and correcting. Kept correcting for a while. Oh, the correction, actually, it was a correction, right. Red kept erasing the correction for a while, but afterwards secretly got to sort of like the desecration. Red later added a rather skillfully drawn, somewhat garish painting of a human brain being hacked to pieces by a butcher in a gray flannel suit and Yaley tie, with pieces of brain and great blobs of blood scattered to all corners of the window. Inside there were more meat hooks on which he hung some special items, and a large butcher block right near the door on which he kept his cash box, bearing Panatellas, glued down to the wood. Nevertheless, the whole box had been swiped twice during the parties he was wont to hold there for his gallery openings. The Numa Tick Gallery. The gallery was a semi-lucrative adjunct to the semi-failing bookstore proper. The store sold various exotic items: do-it-yourself magic books, a set of obscene tarot cards, imported from Japan, many thin volumes, some in lavender or tan bindings of verse, the Half Earth, Half Sky catalog, Peter Mogel's Vaseline jar, a collection, best of all, a collection in cellophane packets of the pubes, hair of the poets, the pubes of the poets. An expensive item to be bought only as a set of 44. They were all genuine except for a few which Red had taken from a girlfriend and dyed different colors. There was also a rather wide selection of current anarchist literature, including a huge pile, almost the entire printing, of William Godson's inflammatory pamphlet, Down with the Slums. Red had become a wide-spectrum activist since his university days at Little Rock, and since leaving Arkansas for the Moscow to Manila Peace Walk, had also taken part in the famous Sikorsky helicopter boarding at Groton, where 6 militant pacifists of both sexes had befouled the controls of 12 Navy helicopters for 4 days in a row. Red was smoking a joint of mean Acapulco when Yuri, who lived upstairs in the next tenement, sauntered in a half hour late. She wouldn't let you pull out, huh? Who was it, Hope or Lorena? You're insatiable. Listen, 2 twats every night will give you a hernia. Yuri smiled sheepishly. He had just jerked off in the hall toilet and felt a little ashamed, but said nothing. He walked to the room back at the store and saw the sleeping-bagged hulk of Ben Woozer. Ben's still sleeping. Fuck, he said. Yeah, he got a bag on, hardy har. Ben was a good old boy from a small Texas town who, after a dishonorable discharge from the U.S. Marines, which he hung proudly on the wall whenever he could afford his own pad, had come to the East Village seeking la vie de bohème. In the service, he had begun a lively correspondence with Tuli Kupferberg, the fabled beatnik poet, whose inflammatory pamphlets he had picked up in various forays to New York and San Francisco. When he had finally met Tuli, Tuli, was very shy and aloof, didn't drink, and seemed like a strange contradiction of everything he wrote. Ben had been working in Marlboro bookstores until he was discovered selling 12 books to a friend of his for the price of one, and was fired on the spot. Since he already distributed many hundreds of books in the same manner, he felt his mission was accomplished. Anyway, and he left with a feeling of relief. He had no Mazuma reserve, however, and was bunking in the back of Red's store until times got better. Red said, I hate to wake him up. I'll puke all over if I do. I think I'll run off some Calm Yourselves until he gets up. Besides, the Mimeo might wake him up. They retreated to a third room at the very rear of the store, where various uncollated sheets of Calm Yourself Motherfucker, a journal of the arts, lay in distorted, multicolored stacks all about. Some had even pushed their way into the toilet, where unknowing visitors had used them for dirty purposes. Red grabbed a few stacks from the toilet and pushed them toward the barred window wall. One of them keeled over, and Red cursed softly. I'm 3 weeks late with this motherfucker already. Shut the door to Ben's room and started the Gestetner. It purred and clicked softly, and soon, on thick purple sheets, the last stanzas of T.S. Eliot's immortal underground poem titled Blowjob, dedicated to Ezra Pound, were coming off the press. Yuri asked him how he had got the manuscript. Red cackled devilishly. Through his subterranean contact in the Harvard Psych Department, namely one Dr. Seamus O'Wary, Blaze had somehow managed to obtain a fair copy of the only extant manuscript of T.S. Eliot's already infamous by rumor poem. How it ever got past its reclusion in the wall safe of the reproduction of Eliot's, actually the room itself digs, moved piece by piece from Mount Auburn's Gold Coast Clavely mansion into the sub-basement of Wyden, the library, will perhaps never be known. For the complex 69-digit combination of the ornately bronzed mid-19th century Moseless safe was known only to the Prexy. In this case, the execrable Pusey, as he used to be called, and passed on orally by each president to his anal retentive successor. There was a proviso in T.S.'s will that the safe might be opened in the year 9,669. Yuri read the poem to himself, chuckling softly. But I'm going to read it aloud to you. He put down his glass and stretched his bare arms along the back of my sofa. The afternoon sunlight struck the blonde hairs on the wrist near my head. His chin was strong, his mouth sucky. I could hardly believe my luck. It was a spring day, a day for Olay, when the air smelled like a locker room, a day to blow or get blown. Returning from lunch, I turned my corner, and there, on a nearby stoop, I saw him, standing alone. I glanced as I advanced, the clean white T-shirt outlined, a forceful torso, the light blue denims divulged much. I observed the snug curves where they hugged the behind. I watched the crotch where the cloth intriguingly bulged. Our eyes met. I felt sick. My knees turned weak. I couldn't move. I didn't know what to say. In a blur, I heard words to myself like a stranger speak. Would you come to my room? Then a husky voice. Okay. I produced some beer and we talked like a little boy. He told me his story, present address next door. Half Polish, half Irish. The youngest from Newcastle, Illinois. Profession engineer, name Bud, age 24. And here he was, sitting beside me, legs apart. I could bear it no longer. I touched the inside of his thigh. His reply was to move it closer. I trembled. My heart thumped and jumped as my fingers went to his fly. I opened a gap in the flap. I went in there. I sought for a slit in the grip of shorts that had charge. Of the basket I asked for, I came to warm flesh, then to hair. I went on. I found what I hoped. I groped. It was large. He responded to my fondling in a charming, disarming way. Without a word, he unbuckled his belt while I felt and lolled back, stretching his legs. His pants fell away. Carefully drawing it out, I beheld what I held. The circumcised head was a work of mastercraft, with perfectly beveled rim of unusual weight, and the friendliest red, even relaxed. The shaft was of noble dimensions, with the wrinkles that indicate singular powers of extension. For a second or two, it lay there inert, then it suddenly stirred in my hand, then paused as if frightened or doubtful of what to do, and then with a violent jerk began to expand. By boundless bounds it extended and distended. By quick, great leaps it rose. It flushed. It rushed to its full size, a royal column, ineffably solemn and wise. I tested its length and strength with a manual squeeze. I bunched my fingers and twirled them about the knob. I stroked it from top to bottom. I got on my knees. I lowered my head. I opened my mouth for the job. But he pushed me gently away. He bent down. He unlaced his shoes. He removed his socks, stood up, shed his pants all together. Muscles in his arms and waist rippled as he whipped his T-shirt over his head. I scanned his tan, enjoyed the contrast of brown. Trunk against white shorts, taut around small hips. With a dig and a wriggle, he peeled them down. I tore off my clothes. He faced me, smiling. I saw all. The gorgeous organs stood stiffly and straightly out, with a flight flare upwards. At each beat of his heart, it threw an odd little nod my way. From the slot of the spout exuded a drop of transparent viscous goo. The layer of hair was fair, the grove of a young man, a tangle of curls and whirls, luxuriant but couth. Except for a spur of golden hairs that ran to the neat navel, the rest of the belly was smooth. Well hung, slung from the fork of the muscular legs, the firm vase of his sperm, like a bulging pear, cradling its handsome glands, 2 Herculean eggs, swung as he came towards me, shameless, bare. We aligned mouths, we entwined. All act was clutch, olfact, contact, the attack and the interlock, of tongues, the charms of arms, I shook at the touch. Of his fresh flesh, I rocked at the shock of his cock. Straddling my legs a little, I inserted his divine person between and closed on it tight as I could. The upright warmth of his belly lay all along mine. Nude, glued together, for a minute we stood. I stroked the lobes of his ears, the back of his head, and the broad shoulders. I took bold hold of the compact globes of his bottom. We tottered. He fell on the bed. Lips parted, eyes closed. He lay there, ripe for the act. Mad to be had, to be felt and smelled, my lips explored the adorable masculine tits. My eyes assessed the chest. I caressed the athletic hips and the slim limbs. I approved the grooves of the thighs. I hugged. I snuggled into an armpit. I sniffed the subtle whiff of its tuft. I lapped up the taste of its hot hollow. My fingers began to drift on a trek of inspection, a leisurely tour of the waist. Downward in narrowing circles they playfully strayed, encroached on his privates like poachers approached a prick. But teasingly swerved, retreated from meeting, it betrayed its fleeting need by a pretty imploring kick. "Shall I rim you?" I whispered. He shifted his limbs in assent, turned on his side and opened his legs, let me pass, to the dark parks behind. I kissed as I went, the great thick cord that ran back from his balls to his arse. Prying the buttocks aside, I nosed my way in down the shaggy slopes. I came to the puckered goal. It was quick to my licking. He pressed his crotch to my chin. His thighs squirmed as my tongue wormed in his hole. His sensations yearned for consummation. He untucked his legs and lay panting, hot as a teenage boy. Naked, enlarged, charged, aching to get sucked, clawing the sheet, all his pores open to joy. I inspected his erection. I surveyed his parts with a stare from scrotum level. Sighting along the underside of his cock, I looked through the forest of pubic hair to the range of the chest behind, rising lofty and wide. I admired the texture, the delicate wrinkles, and the neat sutures of the capacious bag. I adored the grace of the male genitalia. I raised the delicious meat up to my mouth, brought the face of its heart on to my face. Slipping my lips around the Byzantine dome of the head, with the tip of my tongue, I caressed the sensitive groove. He thrilled to the trill. "That's lovely," he hoarsely said. "Go on, go on." Very slowly I started to move. Gently, intently, I slid to the massive base of his tower of power, paused there a moment down in the warm, moist thicket, then began to retrace, inch by inch, the smooth way to the throbbing crown. Indwelling excitement swelled at the lights to come as I descended and ascended those thick, distended walls. I grasped his root between left forefinger and thumb, and with my right hand tickled his heavy, voluminous balls. I plunged with a rhythmical lunge, steady and slow, and at every stroke made a corkscrew roll with my tongue. His soul reeled in the feeling. He whispered, "Oh," as I tongued and squeezed and rolled and tickled and swung. Then I pressed on the spot where the groin is joined to the cock, slipped a finger into his arse and massaged him from inside. The secret sluices of his juices began to unlock. He melted into what he felt. "Oh, Jesus," he cried. Waves of immeasurable pleasure mounted his member in quick spasms. I lay still in the notch of his crotch, inhaling his sweat. His ring convulsed round my finger, into me, rich and thick. His hot spunk spouted in gouts, spurted in jet after jet. "What do you think we should call the group?" asked Red when Yuri had finished reading. "What about Calm Yourself?" "Nah," said Yuri. "We don't want calm. We want excitement." "Right. What about Red Crust of Paris?" Yuri blanked. "You know, Genet, the Pissoise." Too esoteric, too specialized. We got to have something with universal appeal." "What about, fucks?" "No. Fugs, you know, like Mailer spells it. I guess we couldn't get away with the real word." Yuri got excited. "Bullshit, this is the time for it. Let's call ourselves the Fucks. And fuck them all." "Fuck you all," came a voice from the middle room. "Noisome cunts." And Ben, stark nude, dragged his huge hairy carcass from the sleeping bag to the dark toilet and started retching. Red shut the machine and disgustedly said, let's go up front. Now here's an artifact from the period. We'll close with this. We can get it. You are invited to a party at the Peace Eye Bookstore, First Street. Let's go down further. How much time we got? Must be 66 or.
We got 3 minutes.
Okay, so we can read it. So you can read it all. The third anniversary issue of Fuck You, Magazine of the Arts, number 5, volume 8, with cover by Andy Warhol. Porn, poetry, and freak factors. The grand opening of the Peace Eye Bookstore book scene, Freak Center, and Scrounge Lounge in the Lower East Side, occupied, zapped and operated by Ed Sanders. The world premiere of The Fugs, an unbelievable group of singers featuring Tuli Kupferberg on photophone, Brillo box, finger cymbals, and various percussion instruments. Ed Sanders on organ, sex organ, and harmonica. Szabo on amphetamine flute, recorder. Ken Weaver on snares and big stamp buffalo high drum, and guest stars, dancers, dirty folk spews, rock and roll, poetry, amphetamine operas, and other freak beams from their collective existence. There has never been anything like the Fugs in the history of Western civilization. Peace Eye Books, Clitoris, CL, Fortune, and so on. Those were the fucks, my friend. Those were the fucks, my friend. I thought they'd never end. Da 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 dee, da 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 dum, da 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 dee, da da da. They're still around, I hear. They have 5 CDs out in circulation, but God only knows. We have 2 minutes?
Yeah.
God only knows we have 2 minutes where they're circulating.
So what's up next week?
Next week.
2:30, channel 60, very sexy channel.
Next week we have the Fugs' first concert. There seem to be some missing pages here, but oh no, they're behind there. Yeah, next week we have the Fugs' first concert, and first professional concert.
I think the names are changed to protect the guilty.
Yeah, actually, the first concerts were had at the.
The very first concert was at the bookstore.
Yeah, at the Pieces of the Mind bookstore, somewhere in the lowest east side. And so, if you're still awake next week at this time, we'll be here again, and so be there. Be here or be there. No, be here or be there or be square. And see you then, folks. I hope you enjoyed the poem. It's one of a kind, and it's written by literary greats, so it's all okay.